man, got that tractor beam out of commission, or this is going to be a real short trip. Okay, hit it!
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Good evening.
So we may have some technical issues tonight. Jason is snowed in, right? Oh, what did I do?
Literally.
Shit.
Getting buried as we speak.
And for some reason, I'm in a hotel and my internet keeps going in, out, in, out. And I don't really know why. But I asked yesterday and she's like, well, we're satellite. I'm like, she said it might be affected by the storm. I'm like, well, the fuck good is that? Like, do a landline so it doesn't get messed up. You know what I mean? I had the same problem. Okay. I had the same problem on my cruise. I just got back from a cruise yesterday 2 days ago, and I had to go away for work right away. So, on the cruise, the internet was from a satellite as well. And for the first 2 days, it was terrible. Then for 2 days, it was real good. And then for the last 2 days, it was terrible again. So I'm kind of tired of satellite internet right now. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the comeback there. Thanks for keeping it going.
I know it's definitely frustrating. Like I said, I was kind of tailing behind because I was waiting for our network to our electricity had been on, but our network had dropped out, and then it was vice versa. So yeah, it's been pretty gnarly up here. And then I know you're on the satellite, so that's kind of cutting in and out. But if it happens, just have it out there. Let people know that if for any reason this drops out, we have to return. We'll post it up in the group.
Yeah, either one of us will be here talking, and one of us will try to fix what's going on. So be a little sketchy for tonight, but so we were just gonna come on and just talk about stupid stuff, right? But I kind of put in the description, I said, think of your questions if you have any questions. And I was actually thinking of people asking us questions in the comments, but a couple of people took it as putting questions on the Facebook post, which actually worked out great because then we can look at it and kind of have a discussion about what they're asking. There were a bunch of good questions, and we probably will get through all of them tonight. I think there's like 6 of them, and you had a couple of people ask you as well.
Yep.
So I guess we could, first of all, Jason, are you working anything?
Right now, no, just literally finishing up the tail end of A-Wing and finishing up training remote. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just scrapping together some parts and been picking up some kits here and there. But yeah, it's been working on a couple helmets to like some side projects. Trying to again find some bits and pieces and parts, but yeah, nothing. With celebration around the corner, I'm trying not to get too hardcore into anything. At least where I'm not in the middle of something, I don't want to jump directly into something new. So if I had been in the middle of something, that'd be different, right? Because you just keep working what you're working on. But where I'm kind of finishing up a few things, I haven't taken on anything new at the moment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the exact opposite. I actually have been okay. So I went away, right? I went on vacation with my wife, and we had a great time. But I think I told you, like, I was kind of really itching to get back so that I could get back to work on my sandcrawler.
Yeah.
I started adding, the plating on the outside, and right before I left, the night before I was leaving, I actually woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't sleep. So I went downstairs and I added, which I've been thinking about getting them on there at least to get it started. But you would think this would be boring and not something to look forward to, but man, I'm fucking loving it. Like just cutting squares of styrene and putting them on there. And so I thought, all right, well, how am I gonna? I want to make sure I get them all in on the side. Like I'm doing the hero side right around the opening, the walkway. And I cut all the pieces out, and I kind of was like, all right, well, how am I going to do this and make sure I don't, if I can't glue them all down, right? So I was like, all right, well, what do I do? So I make sure that they all fit, because some of them I had to trim to get them to fit in the way I wanted them to be. So what I ended up doing was I ended up cutting all the squares out and putting double-sided tape on them and posting them on there. And then as I could shift them around. They were like puzzle pieces. I could shift them around. If one needed to be trimmed a little bit, I could take it off, trim it, sand it. Felt really good to use that double-sided tape to put those panels on. So good that it even helped me put it in place. And then I used really thin glue and just put it around the edges so that it would glue in place. The double-sided tape is still behind it. I would just have it on and then pull a piece off, glue, put it back, make sure it fit, put it on, glued the tile around it, and it worked out so good. I'm very pleased with it. I'm actually very excited. But like when I was talking to you on the phone when I first started doing it, and I messed it up. Like I had to scrape off a couple panels that were glued on, and I had to recut them because they were pretty much wrecked after I was used a putty knife to basically shave them off. I don't know if you remember, I was like, fuck, like, because I had them glued on there. Are you there? Are you delayed?
Yeah, I'm here. No, I can hear you.
Am I delayed?
I think just a bit. Not bad though.
Okay. So yeah, I'm loving doing this sand crawler. I really am. It's been a lot of fun. I've actually done it. I did one video on it, and it got pretty good, like feedback from it. And it's been a while since I had worked on it because I was doing some commissions. But I'm excited to get back onto it and really bang it out. I've started building the inside for the cross sections part of it, and I started the first floor, and I'm going to start the second floor very soon. I'm kind of working on the inside and the outside.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But also, so today I was, you know what? I could send pictures. Today I was at a power plant. Okay, outdoor power plant, coal and gas burning power plant, and it's real mechanical and industrial. So I took a lot of pictures of some cool things that I thought, all right, well, I could try to make this look like something in there, and this look like something inside of a sand crawler. Let me just send these pictures, and then I can put them up here so you kind of see what I'm talking about. Taking real life stuff and using it on this. Share it. There you go. There it is. So this is just like this was built in the 70s. So there's a lot of old machinery there, which makes cool to look at. So you see all the pipes and stuff, and this one was a lot of lights on these old switches. So I went around and I took a lot of pictures to kind of give myself something visual to do the inside. Are you there?
Yeah. I'm looking at the images.
Okay. So yeah, but that's what I'm working on right now.
Nice. Well, that's good. I wasn't saying that I wasn't. When you said, "Oh, I'm the opposite," I'm actually loving it. I didn't say I wasn't loving it. I was just saying that for that exact reason. Like when you went on away for vacation, you were thinking like, "Oh, I want to get back to this. I want to get back to this." I think that's the reason why with heading to Celebration, I don't want to, because I'm at the tail end of so many projects. I'm at a point where I don't want to jump into something new and then leave it stranded for a week and the whole time being like, oh, what can I do better? What can I do? I don't want to like have my, because you know how it is, dude. You start to obsess, right? You start to think about it. You start
Yeah.
to think about where you are, what you can change, what you can do better, what you know. I want to keep my brain free of all the what ifs and like, oh, what about this and what about that and what, you know. So I'm trying to like not bite off something new and then be in that mindset of like, oh, you know, I'm not gonna be able to work on it for another 6 days or another 7 days, or because then it just sits on the back of your mind and kind of goes like this until you get back to it. It's like an itch that you can't reach. You're like
Yeah.
this trying to scratch it, but you just can't.
Yeah, I was on the ship, and my wife likes to sleep in, so I spent a lot of time up on the deck, just sitting by the pool, watching out the waves, right? And I talked to you a lot. I talked to John a lot, and I talked a lot about freaking Sandcrawler most of the time. It was on my brain a lot, and to the point where sometimes my wife would say something, and I wouldn't really hear what she's saying because in my mind I'm thinking about what this kit part is that I'm looking for, and I got in trouble.
The way it's coming over to take your mail, and she's like, "I'll have mine, medium well." You're like, "I'll have a sandwich."
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. So, what did Stuart say? He says, "Hey guys, Sandcrawler looks a nightmare to build, Chris. One thing's off. Boom. Yeah. If you don't have it measured right, which I found out pretty quickly, the opening threw me off. I didn't realize that there was something down below, like it was." There's an opening that's different size than the one you see on screen. And I kept measuring and I'm like, what the hell am I missing here? Like I couldn't start. I couldn't do anything until I got this one measurement from the reference, right? And then once I had figured that out, well, I didn't figure it out. I asked John and he told me. Like I was like, all right, now I know. Now I can go. I can actually like use this measurement to base all of my other panels off of. Like I could zoom in, pinch and zoom on the picture to get it to the exact same size as the kit parts and then go from there. But like he said, there is a nightmare to build because one thing's off. Well, that's not necessarily true because all of those panels, you can measure it on there, but even when you're measuring the picture, there's like, you zoom in on it and it has a little bit of a fuzz to it, like in the edges. So you can't get it exact, okay? Because there's like a shadow or an angle or something like that. So you get kind of close, and then as you're lining up the panels, then the plates, then if it doesn't fall out, well, I'll shave a little bit off this one. I'll shave a little bit off that one. And it kind of like, condenses a little better so you can get it all in.
I know what he means though. With it being a little bit on the bigger side, it's one of those things where, let's say if you have 75% of it done, and then like one piece is, just not even slightly but significantly off, it almost can put you in a scenario where you have to like walk it all back.
That's why I did the double-sided tape, because then if I had glued it on, I'd
you
been
would have
stuck. I'd been fucked.
And then we had noticed looking at some images and just trying to figure out, instead of the Sandcrawler a little bit more, even like the one, like looking at some images that Lauren had posted and some of the behind the scenes pics from that Star Wars page, which is a pretty cool resource. Because some of those have really good lighting, some almost better than like the behind the scenes pics. Not the behind, like the the sort of studio scale, don't show anybody type pics. Some of the everyday publicly available pics have some decent lighting on them, And
Yep.
we were noticing like the panels, how like some of them weren't as necessarily as clean as you think they'd be, and the scribing was
Mhm.
kind of shoddy and messy. And you also have to take that into consideration too, that like you don't want this to be machine-like precision. Like we're seeing some 3D variations of these sand crawlers starting to pop up, and people aggregating resources and realizing that like this isn't like like just it isn't like a mechanistic approach. It isn't like this machine-like precision of
Mhm.
scribing and line work. It's very
Mhm.
kind of like you know
Cattywampus.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
And
that lends a huge hand to its overall aesthetic.
so okay, two things. When I first started doing those doors on the side, I cut them with a scissor, right? I thought, all right, well, I can get them pretty straight with a scissor, a big scissor, no, not really. It like goes like this, and a little bit of a curve. So I'm like, all right, well, I don't really like that very much. And I thought, all right, well, I'll start over and I'll do them by, scribing them and, snapping the styrene, uh, which, worked out better. But then I noticed um, some builds where it's like too perfect, like too clean. And especially like when you take, for example, like a 3D printed one, okay? They draw that up on whatever program they use, and every line is perfectly straight and every space is perfectly straight. And you look at the sand crawlers, it's not perfectly straight. It's not exactly the same spacing. It's not, it could be, some of them have smaller spacing, some of them are right up against each other, some of them have like, I
And
don't know, like an eighth of an inch space.
some of them are even like lifted a little bit higher up or a little bit farther
Hmm.
back. Yeah, so
Yep.
that machine-like precision that's being done in 3D Fusion or whatever rendering software you're using, yeah, it's being done in these like fine lines. I mean, this isn't. I'm not getting off track to try to get into like 3D stuff, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
attention to detail, it allows you to really think about, okay, this is with such a large piece. Again, it allows you to start thinking about, okay, these are some of the things that are going to affect how
Hmm.
placement is done and where you can fit pieces in, because it is going to make a difference.
Oh yeah. Like at first I was looking at these panels thinking to myself, all right, they're a little too crooked. They're not. And then I started cutting them really straight. And then I put them on and I'm like, I don't really like that. Like I want them to look organic. I want them to look messy. I want them to look like it kind of takes away from the personality of the piece if it's too straight and too picture perfect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially on that, especially on that. Other things as well, but especially on that. Like, and then when I was putting the panels on, at first I started spacing them to get them kind of the same, but then I'm like, no, 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 I can't do that. I got to, like, some of them got to be closer, some of them got to be farther, some of them got to be slightly tilted, some of them, and the more I look at this thing, I find different things in different pictures that I didn't notice before. So, like on the edges, okay, I realize, all right, I skinned it. I put one layer of styrene on, but that's not necessarily the case. Certain areas are a lower level than what I had done. So I actually had to like slice it and chisel that like a little 3/16 channel so that it gave me my three. There was the base level, the first skin, and then the panels. So 3 levels altogether. And I'm like, oh man, like, I wish I'd have looked at this a little more deeply before I just took it and started skinning it and putting everything on. Um, because I could just do it like that and it would look great and nobody would notice, but I would notice.
Yeah.
Be something that bothers me. Like let me pull up a picture. I think we might have talked about this before with the 3 levels. Did I talk about this with you already? Well, we don't have to. It's going to take me too long to find it. But yeah, so I'm really having a good time with it. I'm kind of bummed I don't have a lot of time this week because I had to go away for work, and I feel like I'm getting somewhere now. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to point out was uh, the reference pictures. Okay, so I actually tried cutting. So what I did was I took templates of each wall and cut it out of styrene, so it was exactly the same as like the front. There's like a couple different angles on the front and a couple different angles on the sides, and each angle I would cut styrene that I'm going to use as plating, and I would measure and draw on all the different panels so I can cut them. And I actually did the front where it's like the very front, and then it slopes down to the headlights.
Okay.
And I did it. I drew it on the styrene, and I came up like an inch and a half short. Okay, like just measuring off this one picture, and it kind of disappointed me. I was like, "What the hell did I do wrong?" Because I'm looking at this picture, and I'm like, "Okay, I measured it a couple times, measured it, and then it dawned on me. I'm like, you dumbass, that's an angle. Okay, the one front top panel where the windows are at was a straight on picture, but then the bottom angles down. So as it's angling, my measurements are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, which totally threw me all off. So not only is it a bitch to freaking measure it and draw it all out, but then you also have to find pictures that have as good of a straight on view as possible. And sometimes that's just not possible, so I don't know. It's going to frustrate me, but at the same time, I am actually enjoying it a lot. So I guess we can move on. Enough Sandcrawler talk for now. This question. I would love to. I would so love to. But I almost feel like if I try to, Jason Eaton's McGorry Sandcrawler would be in my head so much, and like I would just never be able to compare mine to that, because that thing is a fucking work of art. We've talked about this, Jason. That's like my favorite model that I have seen anybody do. We've talked about that. Maybe one day I'll tackle it. Maybe when I start getting a lot better with some 3D printing and design, because that's all, a lot of that is just, he did it all, a lot of it in 3D. I don't know how much of it I would do in 3D because I'm not as prolific in it. Plus, I also actually like working with styrene a lot. So you never know. My skills need to definitely get way better for me to tackle something like that.
Yeah, definitely. No,
Jason?
the Macquarie stuff is. I can't see myself ever building a Macquarie Sandcrawler. I found that I get nothing against it. I'm with you. I think it's a beautiful piece. I think it's one of the top three to five pieces out there that I've seen. It's just one of those things that, just like anything, I have to have this sort of connection, not with the aesthetic of it. Putting something like that in my collection is one thing. Wanting to build it is another. I've noticed that working on some projects behind the scenes that I don't really want to talk about just yet. And I'm not trying to be coy, but there's a reason for it. However, I've noticed by doing that and doing a lot of these scratch build pieces totally from scratch, I've noticed that there's a certain like way I like to work, but also with a specific type of like shape or feel or overall aesthetic that I like to work with when I'm scratch building. And like you said, Chris, I would prefer to work on it, from scratch rather than 3D parts. But again, 3D printing can be a very useful and proficient tool with building something from scratch, especially when it comes to idealizing pieces that you can't really see or it wasn't on screen because it is a concept piece. But until I get past this sort of like box that I've placed myself in, unfortunately, I found the comfort zone that I really like being in, but I'm being careful with it also because I want to avoid becoming complacent and fall into that area where I'm almost not scared, but I'm reluctant to step out of that comfort zone because there's certain shapes and sort of ideas that I like approaching and I approach with confidence. And there's others that I'm kind of like, well, let me put that aside for later. And it becomes one of those things where later eventually comes, and then it's like, okay, let me push it back a little more, and so on and so forth. So as of now, no, but I do like the not the Synchros, yeah, I like the snow speeders. A lot of the Hoth vehicles, the concept variations of them, those I've gotten very comfortable with as far as the aesthetic, the design, the shape, and the curvatures and things like that. But I think the Sandcrawler, I'm with you. I think it's one of those things where until I get a little bit more comfortable with my skills and honing them a little bit better, it's an ambitious piece. It's an ambitious piece.
Oh yeah, hell
There's
yeah.
there's a lot there that is available just through the concept art. So yeah, unless I could do it justice, I'd want to wait for the right time.
I'll be honest. Sandcrawler is I don't know if my three favorites are Falcon, Sandcrawler, and Slave One. They're my three favorite vehicles in all of Star Wars, and I love Sandcrawler. I eat, sleep, and breathe it. Back when I made my first one, and now I'm making this one, and I'm obsessed with it again. It's one of those pieces that everything about it I love. The paint job, the just how it's made, how big it is, how many different kit parts there are on it. It seriously is a work of art. It is honestly one of the I don't know. Falcon probably is number one. I mean, that's top shelf kind of model building. To me, Sandcrawler is right up there with them too.
Yeah.
So which, as talking about work of art, kind of leads it into the first question from John. I got a question. Do you see what we do as legitimate art? If so, how would you explain that to someone, seeing as how we basically make forgeries of the work that has gone before us 40 years ago? I absolutely see it as work of art. It's artistic license. Like wasn't there like people who copied like Da Vinci's work and stuff like that? And like, it's no different. I mean,
Well, that's how I
isn't
was
it?
going to answer it. Basically, how I was going to approach it is similar. So, well, when you're copying the work of like Da Vinci or Picasso, there's this statement, right, where now it's kind of modern day. This generation would know it as like a Banksy statement, but Picasso originally said it, where it's like, you know, if basically artist copying versus stealing, and Banksy's statement is basically like, great, good artists copy, great artists steal. But you're not stealing the idea. It's no different than you have somebody like Jeff Koons or Damien Hirst who, don't really pick up a paintbrush. They are the creative director, if you will, right? They come up with the idea, they don't execute the idea. And by doing so, you have people who, go to work and execute what's in your imagination. It's no different than George saying, hey, this is the image I'm seeing in my mind's eye, and then McQuarrie painting it on a canvas. Or, Joe Johnston or Neil Rodas sketching something out and then them building it into what you see in its full form. No, I get it. Is it copying? Yes and no. But at the same time, the reason why I think it's an art is because you have to be able to apply and execute that skill to a specific level, because it's like this. To sum it up perfectly, Chris, I can give you a recipe, right? I can give you my grandmother's favorite recipe. I can give it to 10 other people, but doesn't mean that everybody's going to be able to cook it and have it taste just like my nana's pasta. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're not going to be
Exactly.
able to do it. So
Yep.
it's that recipe, taking it, and that person going to take their first bite and not being able to tell the difference. So if you take that recipe, so to speak, or that element in which an ILM model is built, because we've talked about it ad nauseum. It definitely has its own style and aesthetic for various reasons. And if you're able to replicate that in a way, that in itself is art. It's a level of skill that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of,
Does. Yeah.
overall due diligence and understanding and reverse engineering, visually and mentally reverse engineering it, and bringing it back to life. And I mean, even the ILM guys, they had to do it in a way where you have guys who have strengths and weaknesses, and people had specific levels of skill sets, but they had to show cohesiveness and consistency in the models where, we weren't able to tell the difference that 6 different guys worked on, the same thing. And that in and of itself is an art. No one person worked on any one model. Even if somebody else came in and just glued one other piece on, that's a collaborative work right there.
Yeah, I see it. I definitely see it as artwork.
Yeah.
Just on the painting alone, I mean, you're never going to get it exactly the same. Okay, so you are making your own canvas, basically. That you could people try to emulate it exactly, but it's impossible to get it exactly the same. I mean, it's impossible. Because we don't know how exactly they did things. We don't know exactly how they did this blotch or this stain. We're kind of getting educated guesses from people who have studied this stuff for years and years and years. And something I make or paint, like if I do, let's say, a sandcrawler, okay, it looks a certain way. If John does the sandcrawler, it's going to look different. It's gonna have a lot of the same similarities, but it's his artwork, it's his canvas, and the one I do is my canvas. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And even building it is an artwork. I mean, it takes a lot of skill to build these things, whether it be 3D designing it. That's an artwork in its own. To
That is,
design
yeah.
things, it's artwork. It's a different form of artwork, and it's something I'm not good at, and I don't quite comprehend yet. But I don't deny it's artwork. It's also a different way of building.
Chris, another thing that makes it feel like art, and it's a great question that John asked, right? Is it basically a forgery of the work that has come before us? The reason why I see it as legitimate art is because once you start to get used to certain things, you also get to a place where, because everybody has their own way of executing it in their own style, you start to get to a point where you can be like, oh, that's something Jason built. That's something that John painted. You start to pick up on a person's stylistic approach to something, where somebody exceeds at something. And you can start to say I mean, this is more of from a diehard perspective, but not even so much. I mean, there's people right away who can recognize, certain pieces and say, oh, so-and-so built that, or so-and-so built this. And that right there goes to show the artistic aspect of it, the artistic approach to the project itself or the model itself.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to take care of something real quick. So continue with.
No,
Why don't you hit this?
Yeah. So
You can
next
go with
one
this.
we get. So Peter Lawrence asks, question: based on my experience with the scratch builds, especially my current Walker scratch build, which has been taking me ages, how do we determine when enough is enough when aiming for screen accuracy? This is a lot of really good questions. All right. So how do you determine when enough is enough? That one I think is a hard one to answer. Only because I think if you ask 5 different people, you'll literally get 5 different answers. Whereas some of these other questions, you can ask 5 different people and maybe get 3 people that answer the same and 2 people that answer the same. The enough is enough part, the reason why that's tricky is because we're creatives, right? You're doing something artistic, and we are all our worst, our own worst enemy. I say this to Chris all the time. We get in our own way because it's like, oh, I coulda, shoulda, woulda. I coulda, shoulda, woulda here. I should have changed this. I could have changed this. I could have done that better. And that becomes an issue, right? Where I may look at somebody else's work and say, wow, that's beautiful. That's amazing. They're thinking in their minds, well, it isn't done yet. Well, what do you mean it isn't done yet? Again, it goes back to when is enough enough? But you specified when aiming for screen accuracy. Now that defines it a little bit more. So putting that into detail, I don't know if there is a situation where enough is enough. I mean, if you're talking about doing your due diligence, trying to source parts, trying to find parts, trying to match that accuracy the best you can with the resources that you have, if you're willing to take that time, effort, and energy and wait it out, if it isn't a commission and you're not against any deadline and you don't have to meet any specific day or time that needs to be finished, and you're looking specifically towards accuracy and detail, then I'd say, there's really no way to determine that. I've had projects that I was, able to finish in 6 months. There's projects that I'm still working on 2 years later because I'm still waiting on that one piece or looking for that, one elusive piece. The walker, if you're talking about the chicken walker specifically, it's interesting if that question relates to that because I'm on my fourth one. And if it on the back, or what we'd consider, its back, it includes the Porsche NTEX, one of the exhaust. I think it's an exhaust piece, but the Porsche NTEX piece. That kit alone is 1,500 to 2,000, if you can even find one. And all you take is that one little piece. So if you're going for accuracy and you want everything to be exact and screen accurate, then yeah, it's one of those pieces that will it ever be done until you get to that piece. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I answered, but at the same time, I didn't. I just feel that enough is really never enough if you're aiming for accuracy. If you're going for, just slight detail and feeling like you could have done something a little bit better, or you could have brushed up on something a little bit differently, then yeah, I think we need to start, as the creatives, dialing back that obsessive compulsive aspect of things and realizing like, hey, I've reached a point where there's nothing more I can do and I have to call this done. So
Yeah, I agree. I that you can keep going. I mean, you can keep going and keep going and going, and then you just have to at some point say, all right, I've done everything I can. And even after it's gone, even after you finish it, I look at certain things and I'm still like, I can fix this. I can fix that. And, but I try not to unless it's something. Okay, so take, for example, the silo I did. I had it, I finished it, and then I put it on a shelf. Okay. And then there were lights on top of it that were shining down on it. So it gave it shadows underneath those C-Lab parts. Okay. That I was like, oh, wow, that looks really cool. So I thought, all right, well, I'll just put a little bit of black paint underneath it, giving it shadows so that it would look like that even without it being underneath the light. So, yeah, you could keep going on things forever, but at some point you just have to be like, all right, I'm done. Wait, Scratch Bill has been taking me ages. How do we determine enough is enough when aiming for screen accuracy? Peter, you're never going to reach perfect screen accuracy. So you get it to however far you feel you're comfortable, and, whatever you're happy at. Plus, if you keep trying to get perfect screen accuracy, you may never finish it.
yeah, that's why I said you got to get to a point where you're comfortable with what you consider to be done,
Yep.
And I had just said, like, if you're looking for accuracy, but you have the information, you have the resource and the detail there, and it's not a commission or a deadline, then go for it. You can take as much time as you want. But going back to what you were answering as well is like, if you start to obsess over certain parts and pieces, then you got to step back from it a little bit, give yourself some breathing room, and realize like, hey, I need to stop, because we've said it many times. We look at pieces and say, oh, that looks fantastic, and the person turns around and says, hey, it isn't finished yet.
Yeah.
Well, you can start to tell the difference then, when it's not that it's not finished, it's that the person is going over in their minds all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. And at that point, you just got to realize like, hey, it's time to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, Richard, I think Richard is in the chat. He's listening, or he was. He chatted. He commented a little bit ago. When doing studio scale models, how much liberty do you take when you can add more detailed parts on the interior or exterior? when ILM slapped them together in amazing ways for exterior shots. But now we have way more reference for what an interior could be. For example, Luke's X-Wing has a cylinder rod in ESB on the X-Wing close-ups, right front of canopy, but not on any model I've really seen. How do you decide? Do you try to add lights, doodads, thingamabobs? Looking forward to the show. So lights, yes, I had lights. I had a lot of lights. I don't know why, because most people don't turn them on. I'm sure. Like I've spent a lot of time.
Interestingly enough, you're right. Lights are very rarely used. I've noticed.
Very
Even
rarely,
people
yes.
request them or ask them, they turn them on once when they get it and never use them again.
Yes.
I see that so often.
I like doing lights. I have a setup where lights work for me because I have it all wired up so everything can turn on. But like I sent some models out and there are lights in them, but I know that they've never plugged them in. I don't know. People want them, but they don't use it. So I don't know if sometimes they just are like want to show people with lights. So as for like X-Wing interiors, you can do whatever the hell you want, dude. Like seriously, you can make it as accurate as you want. If you're going for the model, that's totally different. Because the model's not going to have, say, things like this, right? Like this cylinder that's here, right? It'll have something that looks like this. I know Jason Eaton actually does a lot of cockpit in X-Wing cockpits and tries to make them very accurate, and he's very good at it. I know I wouldn't be very good at it, and some people want it and some people don't. I try to strive for. Okay, I hate to keep saying this, but like my Sandcrawler again, right now, I'm making it as accurate as possible to the model on the outside. Okay, the inside, I'm doing a whole different thing. I am doing like the cross sections books. I am painting it inside. I am adding floors. I'm adding machinery. I'm adding cranes. I'm adding lights, which wasn't on the original model, and the original model had like wires inside on the non-hero opening. So I don't know how you feel.
I'd like to answer this question. I think this is personal to each person, but I also think it relates specific to whether you're doing a commission or you're doing a personal project. If I'm doing a commission, we have a lot more technology at our disposal today than they did 40 years ago. We can 3D print pieces. We can add technology that's easy to use, faster, more efficient, bulbs that aren't going to melt or damage the model once you light it up once or twice, etc. And if you're working on a commission and someone says, hey, the model doesn't have this, but the one-to-one scale, hero shot has this. Can you find a way to put that into the cockpit? Well, yes, you definitely can. It all depends on how much, someone really wants, how much they want to spend, how much time they're willing to take. And, that's an option. For me, however, and this is my personal response to that question, if I'm building a project for myself, and Chris, you know this, I tend to like things to be as true to screen as possible. For example, when I scratch built my training remote, I even went as far as finding, if you see some of the behind the scenes images, you can see the box that it was attached to that made it spin and turn. I even went as far as finding the original motor, the original plug, like all the older original technology parts. I like the idea of having it emulate exactly what it was used as during production. The walker, for example, everybody who does a scratch build walker for the most part completes it. Well, on screen, the left leg isn't finished, and it's even marked off screen, meaning this isn't the part you're going to see. And for some reason, I like the idea that, it wasn't finished, so I left it that way. And it
See now, Jason, pause right there for a second.
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. On the ATST, I want both sides, even though it's not screen accurate. Okay, it's not. I'm sorry, not screen accurate. I'm saying model accurate. I am going to do it both sides. Whereas, like on the Red Jammer, one of the engines isn't painted fully. I love that. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. One thing I like it, one thing I don't like it. You know, and
Yeah.
like the Sandcrawler, I'm finishing the non-hero side that wasn't finished. You know, just because it's what I want to do. Like I said, it's my model. I can do whatever I want.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I said there's a difference between like doing like if it's a commission versus a personal one. And a personal one, I think, yeah. I mean, if you want to take those liberties, you have the ability to do so, and that's great. I just find it where even with the helmets, I mean, dude, you know what I've gone through with the helmets, tearing them down, building them back up to make them as nobody who's going to see it. Nobody's going to see it or know that it's there. And it's not even about like, oh, I'm private my collection. Even if I took pictures, you're not going to notice or see it. It doesn't make a difference. But for me, I like knowing that it was implemented the same way it was as used during production and or on screen. But at the same time, you're right. Some things aesthetically have a certain value, and if you're building it that way. But I do think, all said and done, at the end of the day, we have a lot more, abilities and resources at our disposal than ever before when it comes to 3D design, printing, lighting. There's a project you're working on now where we're doing an Adreno board. We're doing a light and a soundboard that I'm building for you, and like that's something that they couldn't do 40 years ago. They would have had something the size of a car battery stuck inside the model to make that happen. Now we can build the palm of our hand.
I think a lot of times we come across as not liking 3D printed stuff, but 3D printing is another arsenal in your toolbox. I don't have a problem with 3D printing. I plan on using it for certain things. I just personally don't want a whole model that's 3D printed and I can't put things on it that I want to put on it. And that's where I'm not like 3D printing is the devil. It's a very useful tool in a lot of ways. It's just how you use it, kind of. I feel.
I'm glad you said that. I agree with you 100%. I think it's just another tool in our toolbox. However, I don't think it should be the entirety of the project or the piece.
No. Before we go to our next question, Chris over here is asking, do you have any favorite ships from the new Disney era movies? Mine would be the U-Wing. That's a cool ship. It's a very cool ship.
I like the U-Wing, yeah.
I'm trying to think. What would I have to say would be one thing that I like? I don't know. I never thought of this. I'm trying to picture some stuff. Can you think of any other than
I actually like. I know this is a sort of I don't know if it's an evolution of the Imperial shuttle, but I actually like Krennic's ship. They call it the ST-149 or the Delta. I like Krennic's ship a lot. I think that's interesting, and I actually also like the way Kylo's ship is designed from an aesthetic perspective.
Yeah, it's not bad.
The U-Wing isn't interesting, but if you look at Krennic's, it has more of like an Imperial shuttle look. I really like that. I think that's interesting. The U-Wing's interesting, but there's been a few.
I feel like I'm gonna gravitate more towards the ships that are in Rogue One. Like the Scout Troopers bike, Memphis Nest bike. Let's see what else. The AT-DT that I have from John.
Yeah. The Memphis Nest bike is definitely another one of my favorites. I love that. The swoop bike. That's an amazing piece.
I would have to say mostly things from even his land speeder in the beginning. I like that too. Like the one where he's driving in the beginning through the city of Corellia.
Yeah.
That's a cool one. Even the tank that comes after him with the dogs in it, I kind of like as well. And then you also go into the hover tank.
Yeah,
that's a good.
This pretty much. And in Solo too, you have the patrol troopers. Really interesting, larger, more formal.
Oh, I was mixing that up. Yeah, I said. Did I say Solo or Rogue One? I said Rogue One.
Rogue One.
Okay, so Solo was the one I was. Both of them, both Solo and Rogue One are favorites of mine. Like a lot of the ships in those. Trying to think what
But
else.
I love my patrol troopers so much. You guys will believe me if I told you. One of my favorite character designs ever. So much so that he's by my bedside.
Nice. I sold mine.
This is a pretty nasty design, though. I love this thing.
It is cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I it's one of the ones that I struggle with parting with, but I'm finding more and more that I. Another one that I like is okay, but this is Andor. You have that Cantwell ship
Yes.
that was in there,
Yes.
but that's not so much Disney era. That's that's taking from
More of a
Cantwell.
nod.
Yeah, more of a nod. And then what's his name's ship? The what the hell is it called? Folsom? No, not Folsom. That was his name. You know, the one that had the lasers that took on the Cantwell ship.
Oh yeah. Skarsgård's ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually bought. Now I just said I don't like to do this, but somebody designed that ship and put out the STL file for it, and I actually bought it. I haven't printed it yet, but it does come in a lot of pieces. It's not one big whole print. You know what I mean? So it's something I actually will have to build. The Fondor. Yeah, that's it. Fondor. Clone War era Hazard Blue. There's a lot of vehicles in Clone Wars that I actually really like. The Turbo Tank, which is a nod to Macquarie. The ATTE, that the one that's in the Clone Wars. You don't know any of these Clone Wars ones, Jason.
I know some of the ships. I have the books, the Art of and stuff.
Yeah.
Books. Yeah.
Yeah.
The show though I haven't watched. Not
Yeah.
much of.
I don't think there's much from the prequel ships that I enjoy. Other than Darth Maul's Sith Infiltrator, that I like. That I would love to build one day. But yeah, not much in that. Nothing really thrilled me in there. But yeah, good question, Chris. That's a good question. So here's a question from Christian, a good buddy Christian. Which part of model making do you enjoy most, building or painting? And what is the hardest thing for you personally that you really threat or don't even like, is if there is any?
Like that you what's it called? That you like, that you like when you get to that part, you're like, do you really like,
Well,
That's-
okay. For me, it was building until I started scratch building, because I hated working with resin casts. I really did. I hated it. I still hate it, and if I can avoid it, I will. I don't know why. I just don't want somebody. I forget who it was. Somebody said to me once, "I don't want to spend my time fixing things on the cast that fixing other people's fuck ups, basically." Now you have casts like Lassie Henning's pieces, which are Cloud Car and A-Wing, and they're pretty amazing casts. They're really nice, and even Merlin Models at is pretty sweet. But like the old resin garage kits, you like sanding and filing all that shit. I hate it. I hate when I'm sanding and I'm filled with dust and I'm like shaking myself off and I've got to wear a respirator because I don't want resin dust in my lungs, and I don't like having to fill gaps because the resin has warped. That's something I really don't like. And I've talked about this before, but I like painting. And I get to a point, I find that I'm just building so much. Like most of my time is spent building. Painting has become pretty quickly for me. Like I can get it all done. Building takes a long time. It's definitely time consuming. And to break it down even a little more, building, the things I hate about building, I do not like doing dioramas. I don't like that snow kicked my ass for the ion cannons. I won't do another. You will never see me do a diorama base or add snow to anything ever again. I don't care if it's model accurate. I won't do it. I will not touch that snow ever again. So
I think
yeah,
I think for me, building for me is what I enjoy most. I think building is something that I've really taken a liking to. I think again, I have to agree with you when it comes to scratch building. There's just something about it that just comes very natural to me, and I'm just really comfortable and confident with it, and I just get in the zone. And even sometimes I'm surprised by what I'm able to, execute and build overall. Painting I enjoy, but as you said, sometimes with painting, once you get used to the style and how to lay it down, and you're familiar with the piece, let me say, because it doesn't come that easy to every piece, but if you're familiar with the piece and you have enough resources on the piece, it's something that can be done pretty quickly. Um, it's kind of that part where like you've got all the ingredients, you mix the cake together, this, that, and the other, and then you get to, you comes to the point of decorating and frosting and that stuff, As far as like things that I don't like, I'm the opposite. I love doing things like, I don't like dioramas, but when it comes to applying, if it's like dirt or snow or things like that, that I do enjoy. I enjoy trying to get that, replicating that sort of real world natural look. Um, I don't know what it is, but I do actually find joy in that. But things that I mean, yeah, dioramas as far as like having to add, a landscape around the piece doesn't necessarily belong there. Adding, figures and details outside of the ship feels a little foreign to me. I'm not against it, but I would do it, but that's probably something that I'm a little bit more apprehensive on because I feel like it's when you get to that point where you've done something so well, that's where I think in my mind I'm afraid, oh God, here's where I'm gonna fuck it up.
well, where I think I'm gonna fuck it up is weathering. Okay, so I can't tell you how many times I painted something and I start weathering and I go too far. And I'm like, son of a bitch. And then I get scared. Like I actually get scared to start weathering a little bit because it's one thing if you start painting, like I've said before, if it's just paint, which is true. It's completely true. You can start all over. But after you've so Hazard Brewer just asked me about the X-Wing. The X-Wing I thought was going to be an easy paint job. It was not. There's a lot of masking.
That one kicked your ass. I remember that.
A lot of masking, a lot of layers, a lot of, it wasn't like I could mask it all, these panels all off.
But in fairness, Chris, it was more the time and tediousness than the task.
Yes.
It was more time consuming.
I'm always scared that I'm going to go too far with the weathering to the point where it's too dark, which I have done on a bunch of pieces. And then I have to start all over because I can't.
And it's something that's almost easy to do. We've talked about this before. Depending on what references you're looking at, how bright your computer screen is, or how old the image is. Sometimes you think you're copying it exactly as it was done at ILM, but you don't realize that lighting and when the picture was taken, what type of camera was used to take it. I see a lot of models built by amazing model makers that the weathering is way too heavy. And they're not necessarily doing it wrong. They're just painting it as they see it. And a lot of people don't realize it because I see people critique it. Oh, this looks like shit. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. It doesn't necessarily. If you look at it's almost to the point where we've gotten to a level on certain scenarios and certain pieces, we can almost tell what references they were using. Remember? There were certain pieces that people were critiquing things. And I'm like, wait a minute. Before you say that looks like shit, I know what reference they were using. What book or what image that this came from because it's so dark or so heavy. So that's definitely something that's yeah, that's debatable in a lot of ways, but you're right. When it comes to certain pieces that you're like, hey, I got this, and then you realize it's a lot more tedious, a lot more
Yep.
taskful than you expected. Yeah, I can say that becomes a
It's
little overwhelming.
it's really easy. It's very easy to go too far.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
because you're like da 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 da,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you're like,
A couple
oh,
squirts. You're walking that high wire. Okay. And if you go too little, you're like, all right, well, that don't quite look right. And you add a little more, and then you go too much, and then you're like, gosh, shit, 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 shit. And that's where I get. Actually, I've told you before. I kind of after I'm built, painted, I'll take a step. I'll take a day or two before I actually start weathering it because I know if I don't, I'm going to go too far because I'm too like quick
in
to
the
do
zone.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm too in the zone. So I'll like step back and say, all right. And even when I do weather it, I'll do a little. Okay. Leave it go for a day. Come back another day, do another layer because you could paint it, let it dry while you're standing there, paint another layer on it, let it dry, and then like you put another layer on and you don't realize that you've gone too far until it's actually dried and like then it finally gives you the look that it's then you went too far. um I don't like a perfect example of that is the engines on the back of a Millennium Falcon. There are so many where it's just way too much black on it and it just overpowers the rest of the whole build. You have to spray a little, take a minute, spray a little, take a minute, before you actually just like, you know what I mean? That's one specific area of a build that a lot of people, I don't want to say get wrong because it's kind of the wrong way to say it, but like need to slow down a little bit, not rush to get. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah, because like you said, it's easy to get in that zone and get going because you're doing. It's not like painting something all white where you know you're attacking it with white, right?
Yeah, yep,
So when you start the weathering, it's easy to just like, pss, 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 and then
yep.
before you know it, you're like, oh, and then yeah, you have that. And again, it's something. It's, and I guess I'll correct myself in saying this. It's not that I don't, it's not something that I don't have apprehensions on, but I do. In the back of my mind, there's that safety net of knowing, like, okay, if I fall, there's something there to catch me. Meaning, like, I can walk it back and I can repaint it. Now, is that a pain in the ass? Of course it is. But at least with the paint, it's much easier to sort of reverse or paint over or cover up an issue with the paint, as John says so many times, hide your crimes with the paint. With a build, for me, not so much. If I build something wrong, then I'm popping it apart and I'm debonding it, and that's a whole nother. But yeah, with the weathering, you can definitely overdo it a lot easier than you think, but
Well,
it's a little bit easier to dial it back to.
what also can save you though is the final misting then,
Yep,
because
that's
you that can save some of the over weathering. Um,
and you can
or
tone it. You can definitely tone it down and mute it a little bit
yeah, or you could mist it too much and you lose a lot of your weathering, which
and
I've
hurt
also
the
done.
weathering. Yeah,
Yes, like especially when you're using thinned out paint and you want to like do staining or like spritzes with speckles, with a toothbrush or whatever the case may be. You can lose all of that with your final misting if you go too far. I generally like to do all the staining and like speckling after I've done my final misting, because then I don't lose it. I can gauge how far to go once I'm doing it. Yeah, I that was good question, Christian. I really like that. It's such a fine line on how far you go. Like I was like even another thing with mist with over weathering. You before you put your final mist coat on, you could even use the base color to lighten up some of the scorch marks and stuff. Like on the cloud car, I went too far on one part, so I went over it again with the orange, the Scarlet, SP Scarlet, right? And no, it wasn't Scarlet. What color is that orange? I forget. I'm drawing a blank. SP Scarlet? That's SP Scarlet,
I
right?
think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I went over it with that, and it toned down some of the blast effects. So there's ways to fix things, and I don't know all of them. In fact, when I watch some of John's videos, he uses enamels, and then he'll use like a cotton bud to tone it back a little bit with some thinner on it, just to get rid of some of the over weathering. So yeah, thanks, Christian. That was a good question. Let's move to Darren. Darren Eiderton. What model or prop you haven't built yet you are most looking forward to building? First question. Second question, would you ever consider building full time, and do you think it would lose the magic if you did? Okay, first question.
Yeah, it's a good one. Go ahead.
Well, I have one that I'm planning on building. I've just been putting it off because I have I'm gathering resources to make it happen. Just thinking, other than that one, which has never been built before that I know of. There's a lot of background ships that I want to do. Like John just did the pod one. There's another one. There's two other ones that I want to do. There's not a lot of reference for them. They're going to be just scratch building, mostly idealized, probably 50% idealized. Trying to think, is there anything else that I haven't done that I'm like dying to do? You?
Yeah. It's not the most. As you know, I've worked on quite a few complex pieces. Some I finished. Some I'm not even near close to being finished. But after having tackled things like the Walker and finishing up a snowspeeder, the B Wing is definitely an ambitious project, but one that I'm looking forward to that I haven't done yet. So here's the catch-22. It's not the most complex as far as like getting the resources and materials because they're out there, they're readily available. Thanks to all those who have come before us and put all the information together for us. But I guess once you get to the absolute build and execution of it, can get a little tricky in some areas, as I was told. But the TIE Bomber is one that's next on my list to do a complete scratch build TIE Bomber. I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited about that. It's something I really want to do for sure. I want to do it soon. And that's definitely one on the top of my list. I mean, I have some other projects that are a little bit more ambitious, but of course, those are going to take a lot more research and development before I can even tackle them. So as far as something that has resources that are readily available, it would definitely be the TIE Bomber.
Okay. Here's the problem with us, though. Okay, so there's not just one model that we want to build. Like, I have a whole Facebook page, private Facebook page of reference of so many model builds that I want to do. And every time somebody pops something up, I'm like, oh, wow, I want to do that. I start looking into figuring out what the kit parts are and stuff. And I start writing down things and I start looking for pictures. And I'm just like, there's a list of like 20 pieces that I want to do, and it keeps growing every day. Like, seriously, especially the way with John's been building all this shit. Like, he's been like popping things off right and left. And I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. I don't know. I'm just thinking if there's one specific one. I feel like the ones that I want to do haven't really been done that much. Like, you know, yes, the B-wing is very cool and it's one that I want to do eventually. But I find that I like even I've seen some reference material for pieces from Solo, you know, that I'm like, oh, I'd love to build one of those one day, you know,
Yeah.
or the background ships, or even the Moncal ships.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more drawn to those things that haven't really been done very much than I am an X-wing or a TIE fighter or you know, the usuals, which goes back to Hazard Blue here. If I sell this one, I don't know that I'll make another one. If you remember correctly, it wasn't one of the ones that was on my list to do, and I only did it because two of them fell right in my lap. You know, otherwise I probably wouldn't have done it.
No,
Plus,
I agree. I mean, there's definitely ones out there. Like I said, there's other projects I'd like to take on that are a little bit more ambitious, but it's problematic because the resources aren't there. Like I said, there has to be a lot more research and development that goes into it. Like I know you're working on something specific, something special, that there really isn't much resources for. So you have to really utilize the little bit that you're working with, but also try to take creative liberties without going too far. So it's stuff like that. Like I like a lot of the concept stuff. I know you like a lot of the sort of out of sight, out of mind pieces, the more unique pieces, and
even concept tickles my fancy, for sure. Like I would love to build, you know, that snow speeder concept that looks like it has a Y-wing cockpit. I would love to build that. Like we've talked about
yeah,
that many times. Anything really concept that tickles my fancy more than doing an X-wing or a TIE fighter, or, you know, stuff like that.
yeah. I gotta say, it's amazing though how many people are getting into concept as of late. First, it started with some of the McQuarrie art, then it started with people backtracking, getting some of the sideshow statues and some of the figures and things that have already been out there for a little bit. Now people are really getting into a lot more of the concept pieces in general. You have Regal Robot doing the maquettes, and it's really nice to see the interest increase and how sought after some of this stuff is becoming.
You said you had a couple people ask you questions. Do you have them readily available?
I don't. One of them was similar to like the second question about commissions, and I think that's a good. I think that's a good question. I think it's an interesting one. So, would I consider doing commissions full time? And if I
Oh yeah.
did, would I think it would lose its momentum? So, these are questions I personally feel that are you know you're going to get a different response for every person you ask. So for me, I don't take on as Chris knows, I don't take on very many commissions. I only do a couple. I like to put a little bit more time and effort into things because I don't want to say that I'm a slower builder than most, but Chris, as you know, I'm a little bit more meticulous when it comes to the build part, which it's more of like that. I don't say the OCD, but I mean, I'm my own worst enemy. You've seen times where I'm working on something and you're like, oh, you're still working on that one part. And I'm going back and I'm resanding and it's stuff, honestly, I'll be honest, that the end user or the purchaser probably isn't going to notice. Although it's respected and I know, you give me great feedback and John gives me great feedback. The person who puts it on their shelf isn't going to notice that extra half hour I spent on, sort of smoothing out that one little, detail. But for me, it makes me feel better. However, because I am like that in my builds, I think that if it was something where I took on a lot of commissions or did it full time, I do think it will lose its magic and its momentum. Only because there's this feeling you get, and it doesn't matter if you're working on something for yourself or if you're working on something for a client, a friend, whatever it may be, someone who's doing a commission, where when you finish a piece, it's that moment of satisfaction, that moment of looking at something that you build and getting that, like, how do you explain that feeling, Chris? That sort of like
The
that.
exhale, because me, I worry about it until it's in hand and they're happy. Like once somebody has it in hand, then and they're like, oh, I really love it, then I feel better. Like
But
it's
so
a
that
relief for me.
moment where like that, like, okay, I don't it's where it needs to be. Like when you just know it's kind of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that weird moment of coming to the point where like, okay, yes, like this is now done. Because
Or
sometimes
you've had the shits of working on it, and you're like, I gotta get this out of my house. Like, I just gotta get it.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I do think if you do that too many times, and that's why I'm careful with taking on commissions too, is because if you do it too many times, I think when you start to work on personal projects, things for yourself, I think it can kind of put you in a state of mind where you get almost like you're pushing things away, or you're sort of
Hmm.
stepping away from things. And
Hmm.
this is going to be a great example. Chris just mentioned right at the beginning of the stream how he was on vacation, but while on vacation, he couldn't wait to get back home and work on something. You want to be able to stay in that mindset. You want to stay with that level of excitement, that level of ambition. And if you take on too much, not that you can't handle it, but I think it starts to take away from that. Like, oh, I can't wait to do this. It's like, okay, I need to step back. Like, I'm kind
Yeah.
of getting sick of this.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen to a lot of people. A lot of people who thought it wouldn't happen to them. I've seen it happen often where people. I mean, there's somebody that we know very well that was, doing a lot of sales on our commissions. Eventually, was just like, hey, I need to stick a fork in it because
Yeah.
if I don't, I'm gonna go leave.
Yeah. Yeah. He stopped doing commissions pretty much altogether, and like now he's building his own stuff, and
And stuff. Yeah,
he's like his passion has been invigorated. You know.
and you need
Um,
to do that. It's
yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. It is important, and plus, you don't you build things. When you build things for yourself, sometimes if you're doing too many commissions, you tend to look at things that you built for yourself as a possible sale.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to do that. And like as I struggle right now, I'm struggling with these three things that I have up for sale, right? Um, they were for myself, and the only reason that I'm actually parting with them is because I have something that same model but a better version of it. That's the only thing that's making me willing to part with something. Okay. Um, me, I have my full time job, and I had a part time job, which was just for fluff money. So I no longer do that second job for different reasons. Plus, I had been talking to you for a long time saying I would just much rather just because my full time job, I spend a lot of time at home and I have a lot of free time. So I was able to do this part time job, but now I'm doing commissions as my part time job. But I'm doing like one a month. I'm not loading. I don't have a list of people to do commissions for. I actually don't. I'm not taking any money for anything that I have two commissions right now that are on my plate, and I've not taken any money for them. So I don't feel that pressure. Um, and also, if I do one a month, you know, I can make a little extra spending money. Plus, I can I can still do I can still do my own builds at the same time. Like right now, I'm
Yes.
doing my Sandcrawler, and I'm working on an A-wing for a guy, and then after that A-wing's done, I'm going to work on a Sandcrawler for somebody, and as I'm working on my Sandcrawler and my builds, I want to keep doing two builds consecutively so I don't lose my mojo, and I don't want to like get sick of it, you know.
Yeah, I think like you said, the losing of the mojo is important to keep in mind because I think that doing too many commissions can, again, we talked about burn you out, but it can also sort of take you away or take you out of the zone. Because when I use that term, very liberally, but there's a reason why. Because when you're in the zone, man, you're just cracking, right? Things are just going well, things are going smooth sailing. Everything you do, you're just knocking it out of the park, and you take that one left turn and you skid off, and then you just it's so hard to kind of get back into that
Hmm.
that smooth sailing mode.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes if you take on too much, one, there's the pressure aspect, right?
Hmm.
There's that, like, if you're working on three pieces, not that you can't handle it, you can do it, but you want to be able to give the best that you can. And there's also like, okay, well, I don't want to take too much from the stuff that I'm working on. So yeah, it gets a little tricky. But again, I think everybody differs, right? There's people who love doing commissions and, will bang out 4 or 5 commissions in, 2, 3 months time. Then it also depends on the contract that you have with that person. And I don't mean financially, but I mean like the social contract of like, are you okay with waiting 3 months? Are you okay with doing this? Everybody works at a different pace. Everybody works at a different speed, and for different reasons. And it's
Mhm.
just one of those things where, it's yeah, it's an interesting question, but at the same time, I mean, again, you can ask 5 people and get 5 different answers.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Some people don't. Well, I don't know. I don't know why it is that I don't mind doing commissions. Yeah, the money's nice, but it's also honing my skills a little bit. It's the more sand crawlers I do, well, I don't want to do too many. I get burned out and I'm sick of doing them. But this will be my third one I've done now. And I think each one, like, I probably am getting better. I hope
They
so.
get better and better for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To the point where the one that I'm the studio one, I want that to be freaking exactly how I want it, like perfect in my eyes. It don't have to be perfect compared to, people might not like it, but it's got to be how I want it. Yeah, I don't mind doing commissions. Like I said, I've done more now that I have more time. I'm willing to take on some more. I don't want to overload myself, and I don't want to get a list where I'm like, okay, hey, I'm going to do yours in 6 months. I'm going to start yours in 6 months. No, I don't want to do that. One step at a time, brother. One step at a time.
Yeah, that gets tricky when you start getting overloaded and you're like, hey, 6 months out, 9 months out, because as collectors, we run into that too, right? Or we're commissioning people, and it's like, hey, you'll have it in this amount of time, and then you realize it hasn't even been started out or worked on yet. But at least having that understanding, it's a lot less frustrating for us because we know the process behind it. Where a lot of people who don't necessarily understand that process, and there isn't an open line of communication, people get really frustrated really easy. And again, that can really pull the excitement rug out from under your feet. Um,
I feel
yeah,
like one of the part of that question was about doing it full time. I don't know that this is something you could do full time unless you have a very rich wife or something like that. Like unless you're well off enough that you don't have to worry about bills and stuff like that. Like this is, I don't know that yeah, you can make some money, but I don't know that you can make money that you can consistently live on.
well, here's the
Because
thing.
we've talked about this. Like people people come and they say, "Hey, I want to do this," and you're like, "Okay, well, I gotta buy the kit. Let me send
And then
me
it's
six
crickets.
hundred bucks," and then you hear nothing. Like the I people have wrote after Christian put the cloud car up. I had like 5 people write me about the cloud car, and do you take commissions? Yes, I'll do it, but I gotta find a kit. Okay, I found a kit. No, then I don't hear anything back. Like for every one you do, you have 10 that say,
I
"Hey, will
want
you
to
do this commission?" And then they don't show up.
then
So
ghost. Yeah, that's I was gonna say that's another big component, right? So there's two things. There's that part that you just mentioned. People who say, "Hey, do you take commissions?" Yes, I do. And then it's like, "Hey, I got to get the kit." So one, you're not just going to your local Hobby Lobby and picking up a studio scale Tie Fighter off the shelf. Like you have to source this kit, and you
yeah,
either have to front the money, which can be pricey, 5, 6, 700 bucks, sometimes more. So you ask the person who's commissioning it, "Hey, I need that much up front to source the kit, if you can source it, right?"
mhm,
And even that takes relationship building and due diligence and knowing what's available and what isn't. Because sometimes someone will ask you right away, "Hey, do you take commissions?" "Yes, I do." "Can you do this?" "No, I can't," because that piece isn't readily available.
right,
And then a scratch build will be 3, 4, 5 times the amount.
right,
Then there's also the aspect that people look at commissions and it's like, okay, that's going to be 1,500 or 3,000 or 5,000. So that idea that sometimes for people who don't necessarily understand the process and the amount of time, like if you equal it to the amount of hours spent, like let's say you're getting paid hourly for that job, people think, oh, that's a $3,000 piece. They're killing it. That's all 90% profit. Well,
yep,
no, it isn't. and this is something, and I don't mean this in an ill way in any means, but I remember early on when you first started taking commissions, I said, Chris, I said, I get why you're pricing it this way because I know you had some apprehension of, well, hey, I'm not going to go and charge somebody thousands because, my name doesn't yet carry that, despite how good your skill set is. I said, well, you have to take into consideration, every dollar you spend on paints and resins and thinners and that all eats into each piece. So if you need a specific set of 20 different colors for one model, that's $200-300 right there alone. That's eating into the cost and build of the model. And it's easy not to think about that because as we're building our own stuff, those are sort of our resources, our arsenal, our tools out of our disposal. But how many times have you gone through a color and you're like, gosh, shit, I'm all out of reefer white, or I'm all out of such and such because you worked on a commission? You have to go and buy that again. So I think people don't realize that doing it full time would be difficult because despite how much, a finished piece costs, there's not a lot of room for margin. There really
No.
isn't. The margins aren't
No.
high. It's not like a 50-50.
You're paying out a lot to get it finished. People say, well, it's just paint. Yeah, it's a $10 bottle of paint, right? But you need like 10 of them.
There's
$100
thinner,
right
there's
there.
cleaner, there's
Thinner, cleaner. There's your airbrush, your
tools,
all the glue. All the putty, all the glue, everything that goes into it. It may be small amounts, but it adds up. And then on top of that, it adds up quick. Like you could spend hundreds of dollars. Just like I go to a hobby shop, I'm spending $50 each time I walk out of there. For primer and paint and whatever styrene or U channels or angle channels or whatever the case may be.
Or dude, even something like Plastruck where they're like, hey, you have to make a minimum order of this much, and you have to buy multiple pieces and hope somebody commissions another piece. And
the ATST, I needed 2 cheeks, right? I couldn't just order 2 cheeks. I had to order 4 or 5 of them, and then they had to have like a $100 minimum order. So I had to buy things that I didn't really need I thought, all right, well, I might need this eventually. So I had to buy it, and plus we're not even talking about your time. We didn't even mention time.
And that's why I said it comes down to like what you really make. It equals out to like maybe $10 an hour. I mean, it's not a lot. Because once all the resources are accumulated and put into it, let's say you build a $3,000 model, I think you're taking home maybe 15%.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because you're putting weeks, hours, and weeks into that. And then if you're 3D printing, if you're using any 3D printing as a resource, you look at the amount of power you're utilizing, electricity. Even if it's only 17 cents a, watt, whatever, you got the filament, you get the resin, you get the SLA. I mean, there's so many things that aren't thought of.
Even things that you don't think about. Like it could be, we're talking all model stuff, right? Let's just take, for example, I work in my garage. It's wintertime. I buy kerosene, 5-gallon bottles of kerosene at $6 a gallon. Like I'm spending $50 each time I fill up my kerosene bottle, for 2 or 3 days of heat in my garage, because otherwise it's unbearable. It's, and that's not even taking the time, your own personal time. Like people have jobs, I have jobs, and then you have home time, which you could be spending with your kids, or you could be spending with, even though we love being in our garages anyways, but that's time away from your family. It's not really feasible to do it full time unless you have resources other ways,
unless you're being hired or outsourced or things like that. But commission wise, I think is a good way of clarifying that. Yeah, because then there's the time away from the model, right? Because then there's all the research and development. You're compiling resources, you're reaching out, you're aggregating information, and then you start to. There's a lot before the start, and there's a lot for So unless you're doing, you're working for somebody, you're outsourcing here and there. It's hard to do just commissions and commissions alone. But I can see why. At the price point, people think that if you sell a piece of 3,000 or 5,000 or even 7,000, like, oh wow, that's a big profit, and it really isn't. Look at somebody like Lee Ralph, right? He goes to sell a piece and he says, hey, it's $6,000. I said, Jesus, $6,000, I'm not buying that. But when he says, hey, Here's a list of the kit parts that this kit is, that this piece is comprised of, and you realize it's $4,000 alone just in kits.
Right.
Just
Exactly.
in kits alone, it's $4,000
Yeah.
right off the bat before
Yeah.
he's even touched it.
Before you even touch it. Yep. Exactly. That's scratch building. That's a whole different story there. We're talking. You and I right now, we're talking just resin kits. When
Just
you get
resin
into
kits, yeah.
when you get into scratch building, that's a whole nother animal. That's
I mean,
the
look
research.
at the tie. Look at the amount of money I spent on Cool Shade for one TIE fighter.
Mhm.
Thousands. It was
I
thousands
spent
of dollars.
$100 on a piece like this big. Like that big.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you may be buying these model kits for these scratch builds, but you might use one freaking piece
One
in a
piece.
$200 model kit. Like
What we
like the
talked about
Ferraris.
when the question that came up, it said one is enough, and he said he's working on the walker, and I said, well, if you have a piece like the Entex that goes in the back, if you're trying to get that accuracy and you're after just that one kit, a $1,500 kit alone for that one little piece, I mean, do you say F it and not put the piece on, or do you go for it? Like that, there's definitely a lot to think about. But what I am enjoying, and I have to say, I like seeing this, is a lot more people like, hey, I want to try my hand at this. I've seen some get discouraged easily as they get the feedback and they start getting the comments pouring in, all encouraging comments, mind you, none discouraging, but they're just like, I'm going to pass, I'm going to sell this piece. But I do like that more and more people are trying their hand at it, because as long as you have the confidence and realizing that, like, it's okay to mess up as much as you want, because it's all fixable. A little putty here, a little sanding there, and some, repainting there. The more you get used to it, the more comfortable you get, the better. And that's another thing I was gonna. One of the questions that I'd got on the side was about how do you start and where do you start? Now I know it's been asked in some of the groups, like what's the best model to start with. That's a tough question to answer, right? Because you have different people of varying skill levels answering that, and again, you're going to get different answers. When you have somebody who's been building for 20 years, they may look at something and think, "Oh, that's nothing." But if you have somebody who's been building 5 years, may think, "Oh, that's a little bit of a difficult piece." I just think anything, even if one of the answers that I really liked, I think Chris Millen may have even asked, someone had said, "Hey, instead of trying your hand at a scratch build or a resin kit, go buy a Bandai kit first.
Yeah.
Just get used to the painting. Just get
Yeah.
used to the assembly. It may even be snapped together, but just get used to the feel, and then graduate from there."
Plus, they're pretty damn accurate. The Bandai ones.
They are pretty damn accurate. Yeah,
Yes,
they
are,
really they're very, very accurate. There's
I've been
actually even
told. I've been told one specific one you could ID off of that thing. Like you
Yep.
could look at that and ID parts off of it. That's how accurate it is.
And if people aren't familiar, there's actually books. You know how there's like the Chronicles books?
Mhm.
There's 2 books that you can purchase, and they're all there. It's almost like a Chronicles version, but of all Bandai models, up close.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll send you the links for them, but
Okay.
and they're interesting. And you can look through those as a resource. So starting off there is a great way. That's a question that was asked, like, where would you start and how? Someone asked personally, like, where we started. I think, again, another thing we've talked about many a times, the way, and I'm not going to answer for you, so feel free to cut in if I'm talking and going in the wrong direction. But I think it's safe to say where me and Chris eventually started was initially, so I had already been collecting models for some time, but to clarify that, it was more like the master replicas, the EFX pieces. Those are the type of things I had. Now there's still, still nice to have an EFX tie or a, MR AT-AT or Snow Speeder, which I think is now in John's collection. But pieces like that were cool to have. It wasn't necessarily models per se, but they are and there aren't. And there's reasons behind that. But to move further, as we wanted to get into it, Chris has a background with, doing drawing and painting and things like that. I have a long background in painting specifically, not so much building. And we would just try to get into it, and we wanted to try our hands at it. And we realized at that time, it wasn't as sort of open as it is today and getting as popular as it is today. And we're only going back 2.5 years. It was really difficult. There was a lot of red tape.
Very
and it
difficult.
wasn't necessarily all the inside baseball and all the secret squirrel stuff. It was just in general difficult. Kits weren't available.
It's still hard to get kits. Like it was hard to get them then, and it's still hard now.
It's hard to get them now. there weren't all these people out there making them available. There weren't 3D printed versions really much of, unless you asked somebody personally, hey, can you print something like this? And there weren't a lot of options or availability. So got to a point where we were just like, it was swim or drown. Literally,
Yeah.
it was like you do it on your own or you don't do it. And that's
Yeah.
kind of where, and we both say to this day, we're so glad that it happened that way, that the door was shut in our face so many times.
Yeah.
And that doesn't apply to everybody. There was plenty of people who were nice enough to
Yeah,
point
there
us
were.
in certain directions. But for the most part, I'm so appreciative of the fact that it was like, hey, swim or drown, because it's teach a man to fish versus give a man a fish. I wouldn't have anywhere near the level of skill set that I have today if it wasn't for that. And
Yeah,
that's kind of
exactly.
how I started out. I think that's kind of how you started out.
To go on your point there before I get to how I started out was, like even Lee, okay, he's very open about giving parts for the most part. Like if he knows that you're going to do it for the right reasons, if you're going to use it for making money off of other people, he's not. But if he knows that you want to build something for yourself, he's going to help you. Okay. But I also think he was there were times where he probably knew the part, but he also was kind of like nice and saying, hey, I don't really know that. But he probably did, just so that you and I would start diving in and IDing things on our own. And
Yeah.
that's not being a jerk. That's not being mean. That's
No?
not hoarding. That is kind of like a kindergarten teacher teaching a kid to learn how to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like it really is that simple. Like you're not, if you're constantly told, yeah, this is 312B,
Every
such and
single time, then
spruce
you're
one,
never gonna. Yeah.
you're never gonna learn how to do it. In all honesty, Jason, I probably, if that one deal for those MR pieces had not fallen through, I don't know that I would have started building and painting. I honestly don't.
Crazy,
Like,
huh?
yeah, we had a deal where Jason had talked to somebody, and we were going to go and buy up a bunch of MR pieces, and I was going to get a Falcon and an AT-AT, and you were going to get a Y-wing, something
Like a
else,
wide
right?
one. Yeah.
And
And it
we kept
wasn't even that
trying.
great. It wasn't even that great of a deal. It just was a
No,
one-stop situation.
one-stop shop. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kept trying to make it happen. And the more that I saw these, I started looking into like the MR pieces. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's really cool. And then it fell through. And by that time I was already like MR Falcon in my head, and I forget who it was. Somebody, probably you, who mentioned the D'Agostini to me.
Yeah,
I never
I
heard of
remember
it.
Steve had one sitting in a box for a while,
Yeah,
and
and
I remember I was
I
like, the D'Agostini is basically the same size and overall aspect of the MR, and I remember
yeah,
Steve had one, and you
yeah,
guys ended up making a deal, yeah.
and I was like, I just thought to myself, I have to have this Falcon in my collection. I have to. Like, it's something I really want. Like, so it's like, what the hell? I might as well try it. What do I got to lose? So I did. I made it. It helps that I made it the D'Agostini because, how you said that the Bandais are really good kits to start. Honestly, so is the D'Agostini. It's if
Well, you had the
you
familiarity with the pieces already, yeah, and
yeah.
understanding why it's like that, and
Plus, the instructions for that thing are flawless. It takes you step by step how to do each panel, how to do each where each greebly goes. Like it's a build and paint by numbers basically kit that is pretty awesome. So um, that's where I started, and then like it was like, all right, well, there's three ships I have to have. I have to have the Falcon, I have to have the Sandcrawler, and I have to have the Slave One. Slave One was a little more difficult to come across, especially back then. You and I were chasing after a Nicing kit for a while. Um,
yeah,
you got one. Funny story, but you got that one, and You still have it, don't you? You still you haven't done anything with that sucker, have you? No, no.
Yeah, we'll have a bloopers episode. Some of the worst case scenario type. We'll have a behind the scenes episodes of like all the fumbles and
You know what's funny? I
tips
can
and
tell this story. I can tell this story because it's funny. Um, New to the scene. I'm new to the scene. I don't know too many people. I started to get to know John a little bit. I reached out to him, talked to him a little bit. He was still like, I was just a new kid on the block, right? And Guy actually put up for sale an X-Wing, right? And I'm like, oh, there's an X-Wing kit, Jason, right? So I hit up Guy and I'm like, hey, I'm really
Here
interested in
comes
this
the.
X-Wing. I'm really interested in this X-Wing, right? So he's like, oh yeah, let me get it. I'll take pictures.
Hold on, are we getting the unedited version? Because
Yeah.
I think they can handle it, right?
Oh yeah, it's funny. It's hilarious. So he says, yeah. Because I guess nobody else had asked about it, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. Just send me some pictures. He's like, okay, no problem. Guy sends, a couple, like a week or two go by or 3 weeks go by, and I'm like, hey, what happened with the X-Wing? Oh, I had to sell it to somebody who was in the UK. It was just way easier than sending, which I completely understand. Like, it's a bitch to sell overseas, send things overseas. I if it was
I
up to
say it
me,
all the time in my posts. If I can
yeah.
avoid sending overseas, please at all costs.
I feel like that's all I do anymore is send overseas, one way or another. But I would prefer to send in the United States. So fast forward, I don't know, 6 months, something like that, year maybe, and I've gotten to know John pretty well, right? He says, "Hey, I have this X-wing kit that I bought a little while ago."
Wait, rewind. You were
What?
sour over the original sale for a
I
minute.
was a little salty about it. Yes.
So a
Yeah,
little,
I
dude.
was. Yeah, I was a little salty about it. I'm like, God damn. Well, mainly because there was a lot of times where we'd ask for kits and people wouldn't answer us, or they wouldn't like, who's this guy? I don't know him from a hole in the ground. Like,
Yeah,
no
it did
no
happen
names
a
in
lot.
particular. It happened a
I mean, I'm
lot.
from Vermont, so yeah.
Regularly. I mean, you can't tell you how many times we're like, hey, I think this Slave One's available, and we contact the guy. He's like, I sold it already. It was just like kits would come and go so fast because of the scarcity of them. And yeah, I was salty. I was a little upset about it. I was like, damn it, I really wanted to work on this. I think it might have been like the third kit I ever bought. Between the Sandcrawler, the you know. So fast forward a year, and John's like, I bought a couple things from John and talked to him a lot, and he's like, hey, I have this X-wing kit for. I'll never get to it. If you're interested, I'll sell it to you. He's like, yeah, I bought it off Guy a little while ago. I'm like, you sons of bitch, you bought the one that I was trying to get from him. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I tried that. He was gonna sell it to me, and then he ended up selling it to you. I was like, well, it's in my collection now, and it's the set the X-wing I have up for sale right now. I don't know. Like, I'm struggling with sell that because I don't have a backup for that. I have a backup for the Slave One, and I have a backup for the Sandcrawler, but the X-wing, I,
I
I
know
don't.
it's a really nice piece. It's
It is.
really, really well done. It's actually beautifully done.
Yeah, I surprised myself on that one. Like,
Yeah.
there's times when I look at some of the things that I'm not trying to toot my own horn or sound full of myself, but sometimes I look at like some of the things like the Sandcrawler and the Slave One, and I look at him like, somebody else painted that. I didn't fucking paint that. I don't have that kind of skill. I just don't. I don't like it. I think to myself, and that's one that I I think I knocked it out of the park. But it's if I do sell, it's gonna be a tough sell. Like, I don't. I'm on the fence about it. Um, but yeah, it's just a funny story that happened. That it's fine. We could talk about that now because we're friends with both of those guys. But it was hilarious when I found out that John was gonna sell that to me. But yeah, there's a lot of times where a lot of kits change hands
Yeah.
multiple times. Like you buy a kit and you're like, I'm gonna work on this at some point, and then years go by and you don't work on it. And it's like, fuck it, I'm not gonna sell. I'm not gonna.
Then you sell it to the next guy, then he sells it to the next guy, then sometimes end up back in your hands. Yeah, I've
Mhm,
heard that happen once or twice.
mhm.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I like the Force Awakens X-wing I bought. That's another funny story. I bought that. I bought that from somebody. Okay.
Wasn't that me
And
who was like, no, that's not an OT X-Wing, right?
no, I don't remember that, but I bought it off of a guy, and I was like, "Hey, I'm looking for," and he sold us. He sold me like 2 or 3 kits prior, which they were great kits, and I was like, "Hey, I need an X-wing, right?" And I didn't specify. I just I need an X-wing, and to me, there's really the
Yeah, kind of like an
T65.
X-Wing is an X-Wing, yeah.
Yeah, the T65 is the only X-wing I consider an X-wing. And it was very very early in my modeling career. So I didn't really I bought it off the guy and I didn't look at it. Like I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it looks pretty good. Real quick, I left it in the box. 6 months go by, and I'm about to start making an X-wing for somebody. It was for Costa, and I was like, I opened the box up, and I'm like, oh man, you got to be kidding me! It was a prequel X-wing. And I contacted the guy. I'm like, hey, I bought this X-wing from you, and it's a prequel X-wing. It's not. It's not a OT X-wing. He's like, yeah, that's all I have. I'm thinking to myself, shouldn't you have mentioned to me that it's not an OT X-wing? Nowhere in the conversation did it come up that it was a sequel X-wing. And you know how I feel about sequels. Sequels are like toilet paper. Wipe my butt with them and put them in the toilet. But that was another time, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with this thing? And I thought, all right, well, I'll paint it and sell it. But I just couldn't bring myself to take the time to paint this thing. And I was just like, fuck,
Yeah,
what am I
you
gonna
were
do with this?
dragging knuckles on that one. Then we talked about like, hey, do it in the style of McCory. That'll be fun. Remember?
Yep, we tried that. I was gonna do it in the black, and then when
In the
John did
black.
his
That's right.
John did his orange one, I was like, maybe I like that. Maybe I will do it. And then I was like, no, I don't want to do a sequel. And then you had come up with the idea of doing it in the McCory style, and I planned to do it. And I'm like, I just can't bring myself to make this kit. I can't do it. I don't want to take my time out of my life to make a sequel one. So I ended up selling it to Shidlick. Shidlick wanted it. And he has. I don't know if he's ever built it yet.
I don't know, but I'm sure
Yeah.
he'll do it justice,
Oh yeah,
especially
he'll do a great
as a
job on it.
simple piece. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had one prior to that, which wasn't nearly as accurate as the one I sold him.
Yeah, the one you had was amazing.
Oh,
That
it
was
was
a really
banging.
nice cast. Yeah.
Banging. Here's another question we can talk about. Do you think it would be possible to make a sequel ship, or is it just original props made from kits? Yeah,
No,
no,
you can make whatever you want, man.
prequels. There were physical models, a lot of them
Oh, a
actually. It
lot of
wasn't.
practical models. Yeah.
It wasn't all. It's a misconception that all prequel stuff was CGI. It wasn't. It was all of
Fun.
the photography was CGI because they would put practical effects and then they would CGI behind it. And
Yes.
that was considered a CGI scene, even though there were practical effects in it. So it's,
So fun fact, Chris, and I think you already know this, but there's more practical effects in the prequels
yeah,
than there
yeah.
are the original trilogy. Believe it or not.
Yes, there are. There are a lot. Yeah. Most of the ships, most of the environments.
Mustafar, the lava,
Yeah.
the pod race, everything. Yeah, there's so many
Yeah.
scenes and scenarios. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot more practical effects than the OT. So yeah, if you want to do one, I mean, I don't know how many. ships are made with kit parts, though. I think there are. I know there are the Republic gunship, the Republic that red and white one that's in the beginning of the Phantom Menace. That was that was scratch built kit parts. I know that. Obviously,
When you listen, if you ever listen to, there's a couple different episodes. If you listen to Adam Savage and Vaughn Davis, they talk
Mhm.
about their time working on ILM during the prequels, and they talk about a number of the ships that they worked on
Yep.
and what they built and how they built it.
John Eblin too. Yeah, John Eblin.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, if you want to make he made a comment earlier, gunship, go for it, man. Gunship's a cool one. That's a cool prequel ship that I like. I bought like
Yeah, the gunship's
3 of
amazing.
the Hasbro ones. The one with the what do you call that? The eyes and the teeth on the side that was painted for the Clone Wars. I bought the regular one. I bought the vintage collection one. Yeah, I had 3 of them, and they're expensive now.
Yeah.
They're not cheap at all. No. I was considering getting an AT-AT Bandai kit. I have never built anything. Go for it, brother.
Go for it,
Go for it.
100%.
Yep.
Here's
hurt.
your time to build one. Yeah.
Yep. Start there. Start somewhere. Just start building.
I'm gonna look
build
up
for
see if I can get them over to you.
build for what you like. Like I think this guy who says it all the time. Build for the love of what you're doing. Don't build to make money or yeah, you can do that on the side. Don't just build for because you want to make it. Like a lot of people build things and sell them because it's the process of the build is what's important to them. I'm a little of both. I'm a little of the build of it and the collecting aspect of it to have it in my collection. Just start building because you want to build, and it's okay that you mess up. It's okay that it looks like crap in the beginning because like the more you do it, the better you get, the more you learn. It's okay to mess up. Don't be afraid. Let's just say that was my first kit. I went all out on Shapeways, better parts, extra lights. It was fun. They make the X-wing, I think. Yeah, the Diagostini. Yeah, you can get like 3D printed cockpits that have holes in them for fiber optics, which I did. You can get better. You can do better LEDs on the back for the engines, which I did. You can do a whole freaking crazy inside. You can buy every part to the inside of the Augustini to the Falcon, like the cargo hold, off Shapeways. People have come up with 3D printed parts, and most of them are pretty damn good. I've added a few things onto mine. I added some plates around, the back engine, so it's it lights up as a startup, and then it pulses as to imitate that it's flying. And then there's 3D printed plates at the bottom of them. I don't know if that's screen accurate or not. I haven't delved too far into that. I've also made the engines on the back 3D printed parts. They have a fan inside with the grill and the cool shade on. I did the whole entire cockpit and nose, the canopy and everything, instead of buying the inside, just the inside. I didn't do the inside of the Diagostini. I felt as though I'm never going to take the cover off, and it's pointless for me to do the inside because A, I don't like dioramas, and B, I was never going to take it off. So I barely touch the thing. I go and look at it all the time. So the outside is more important to me than the inside. The X-wing is a bigger scale. I think it's like what 1/16th, right, Jason?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bigger
118.
than 1/18th. It's large. It's a larger one. The one I have is a 1/24 scale, and that's a pretty honking big one. It's like this big. this long. It's bigger in person than it looks on pictures, that's for sure.
Hold on, I'm just clipping some images for you to pull up. This would be fun for those that are interested in the Bandai. You still with me? Or did you freeze? I think he froze. But until then, I am going to post some images. See if he gets these. 6.
Are you there?
Yeah, I sent you some images for those interested in the Bandai to pull up. There's 3 different books and then a couple screen grabs of the insides.
All right, let me pull that up.
I'll turn my fan on. Hold on a second. So just like the Chronicles books, Chris, these are mostly in Japanese, but a lot of great reference images and a lot of great detail to sift through. So for anybody interested in the Bandais, you can actually find these. They usually have them Abe Books, ABE Books usually has them. You can find them on eBay. Amazon has them, but they're a little bit on the higher side, around like $80 or $90. Usually on eBay, you can get them for about $50 or $60. And
That's
this is
jammer.
basically, yeah, it's basically like a Chronicles version of all the Bandai kits that were painted by model makers and stuff. And
That's pretty crazy.
yeah, dude, they're great books. I have 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. I have 2 out of the 3. And then I put a couple of the covers. One has the Falcon. Yeah, this is number 2. One has the Star Destroyer, and one has the X-Wing on it.
And Bandai's are good for space too. Like if you don't have a lot of space, you could get a lot of these kits. They're not huge.
Yeah.
Like D'Agostini is honking. It's 32 inches. These are smaller, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, these are cool.
Oh, they're great. They're great for paint references and detail, and I mean they're pretty gnarly books, man. And anybody who's starting out, they're affordable. You don't have to go drop 200 on a regular Chronicles or 1,000 on the Vehicles Chronicles. For $150, you can have all 3 books for reference. There's plenty of pages to sift through, plenty of details to look at of the models in progress and built and finished. There's screen grabs of the movie. Yeah, it's great detail. The only thing is you can't really read it unless you can read, I think, Japanese. But lots of reference.
You just need the pictures.
Just the pictures, man.
Yep. Just the pictures.
Like the Sunday funnies.
And honestly, like these are really accurate. They're licensed.
These ones are painted similar or close to like the ILM models. And I don't know if that's by design or intentional, but they're really, really well done. Like I said, I have a couple of the books, and I flip through them quite often for just to kind of get a set of fresh eyes, and the imagery, obviously, because they're newer books, and looking at photographs from 45, 50 years ago, you get a little bit more of a higher definition look into the color and weathering and things like that.
Sweet.
Yeah, fun stuff though. But again, a good books too, is one thing we always overlook. But for resource, books are a great arsenal for your toolbox. I know the Chronicles has now become the grail, but there's so many books out there, like the Mom book, the Myth of Magic book. There's like a TIE Fighter Chronicles book, and it's more about the backstory and history of the TIE Fighter, but there's so many great images of production and pre-production work and screen used work in there. There's the Art of books. There's the regular Chronicles book, the Japanese version with a few extra pages. There's Sculpting a Galaxy, which you can get for $40-$50 on Amazon. Books are definitely your friend when it comes to resource and just reference and images. That's one thing that I think gets overlooked at times as far as adding things to your toolbox and your arsenal. I think books are something that easily gets overlooked, but they're a great tool to have.
Dude, you know what else we didn't talk about when we were talking about commissions and time and money and stuff? I mean, how many images do you have to look at to just get one panel?
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying, the research and development before you even start the model.
Yeah.
It's all getting that information and imagery and detail. And
not only that, but when you get to like the wing of the X-Wing, okay, like I did Red 5. Okay, so like how many pictures do you have to go through to find that one shot of what you were about to paint? Like the
Yeah.
Millennium Falcon has all those different pie slices. You have to find one picture that shows you, and sometimes it's more than one picture. Sometimes you have like 5 pictures to show, like, all right, it stops here, and then the next one goes here, and then like I spend more time when I'm painting. I spend 5 times more time looking at the pictures, finding the pictures, and before I even start painting something. And while I'm painting, I have to, like, I have an airbrush in my hand filled with paint. I have to make sure I put the cap on because I tip a lot, and it goes all over
Dude,
my
I do it all
shoes.
the time. You pull the paint off.
Oh, all the time.
Dude,
It's all over my floor. It's
the
on
other
my
day, my
shoes.
sweatpants. I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, and then my pants are all covered with the paint because I was looking at the image. I was looking at the images.
I don't know how people paint without the cap on. Like, even when I'm doing movements, like I'm like, moving things around, like it sloshes around in there. Even if it's not filled to the top, I'm still getting shit all over the place. I haven't spilled it on my model yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen eventually. Where'd you go?
Sorry, almost.
No, I thought I lost you.
No.
No, I there's so many times where I'm like, I just mixed up a whole tub of, grime, and I reach over to do something. It's like all over my shoes.
Well,
I
here's the
ruined.
thing. Yeah.
I ruined. Oh my God, my wife was gonna kill me when it happened. We had just bought these new stools for our kitchen. Okay, and they were these expensive stools. They were like $100 each, $125 each, and they matched our kitchen. And at the time, I was painting things in my kitchen. Like, I would put a blanket over the island before anybody would wake up. I'd be up at 7 in the morning. Everybody's still sleeping. I'd have the back door open and the front door open so that the air would flow through the house and take the enamel paint smell out, right? Because my wife is real sensitive to smells, and it gives her headaches. So I made sure all the windows were open. I froze myself in my kitchen, and I'm doing liquid latex. Your favorite. Remember, you never remember
Can't
what that
remember. I
thing's
can
called.
never remember.
Never, ever. It's called Humbrol. Humbrol's the manufacturer, and I tipped it, and it got all over my new shoes and all over the 2 cushions on the brand new stools. I'm like, fuck. Did I hear about it then? Because I had to buy another one to replace it, and it was purple. And you can kind of get paint out a little bit if you just use water, especially if it's acrylic. You can use water to thin it down real, or if it's enamel, you can use paint thinner to get it out. Oh no, liquid latex in cloth does not come out. Nope, nope,
Mhm.
nope. Mm-mm.
And what's interesting, you talk about like who paints the cap on, right? So there's the risk of doing one of these, like, oh, what's that? What is
Mm-hmm.
that? Oh, or you put the cap on, but then when you're done, you're trying to wrestle it off, and the paint just whoosh, goes everywhere. It's just so it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And I used to struggle with airbrushes a lot. Like, I granted, I was buying cheap ones. I went through like 5 $30 ones on Amazon, right? And they never really sealed right, and eventually things would wear out. And it didn't help that I was using harsh chemicals on it. It was ruining the seals and stuff. And then I would get like bubbles showing up in my tub, and it would like bubble out the top and all over myself. Like, I wouldn't even notice that it was coming. And because of the seals weren't good, and they were letting air up in through the airbrush. And oh man, the things you learn when you start doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I still to this day still tip my airbrush all the time. All the freaking time.
Yeah, I do it constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I try to put the cap on, but I hate wrestling it off.
And a lot of times I have my paint booth, and I put my airbrush on the hook. I have this hook, and then the hose is like laying on the ground. right? I'll go to walk away. My foot will catch that hose.
You take the hose with you. Yep.
Oh, fuck. Then you got to remix it. Yeah. Yeah.
The trials and tribulations, man. If people only knew.
You know, I'm in this hold on. Hold on, I'll be right back. Hold on. I gotta show you something.
Let me see any other questions come in. Disney error, I think we covered that. Start trying my hand at model building, awesome stuff. Definitely, Michael. I think you should definitely start.
Fuck. Damn.
Yeah, Country Club makes a good statement.
What's that?
I'm just going through some of the comments and reading if there's any other questions or statements.
Okay. So I'm in a hotel room, right? And do you remember the Endor ship, right? That part that I ID'd that I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is. It's the lock nut for lampshades, right?
Boom.
Boom. Here's the problem.
Stole from the hotel?
I want to steal 2 of them from the hotel. They're like perfect. All the ones that I find in the stores don't have this
too far apart. Yeah.
Yeah, the serrated edges are too far apart, but these are like bang on. Ugh.
So when you leave in the morning, do you check out? Because you can go to the hardware store, buy 2 for $1 a piece, and switch them out before you check out completely.
I do leave tomorrow.
Yeah, just go to a local hardware store and screw on a replacement.
Shit. Yeah, but I gotta leave at 7 a.m. Fuck.
What's the brand light? Look at the brand of the light.
They're probably specific to these lights. Damn, I can't really steal these. Oh, shit. They're like perfect though. Damn. How can I take care of this? There's a Walmart that's open 24 hours, I think, close by. Maybe I could go.
I would do that. Because all I need to do is put new ones on to keep it secure.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be the same amount of width.
Damn, if I was staying here one more day, I would definitely do that. Some bitch. Maybe I'll show what. So people do it. Find the brand of the lamp on the bottom or something. I'm trying to think how I can do this. I wonder if they would even notice.
They wouldn't.
If I put the lamp, the bulb back in.
Most people steal batteries.
I'll have to see how
He's
it works.
committing a crime live on a YouTube stream.
I am. Dude, they're perfect though. Look at them.
They are. I was gonna say they're not spaced far apart like all the other ones we were looking at.
No, let me find that picture and I'll show people what I'm talking about. I'm gonna look, see if I can find it quick.
Yeah, I got a shelter on space coming up, bro. I gotta take a quick nap.
No, man, fuck shit. Yeah, can't. I'm gonna find this and then we'll get off. Groups. First, I gotta find it.
Dude, it's still snowing.
Is it really?
It won't stop.
Damn. See all profiles. There it is. No, it's not there. Fuck. See all pages. There it is. Dude, these are perfect. Did you have any other questions come your way that we can talk about quick while I'm doing this?
No, just I guess it's some of the basic ones I brought up.
There were some good questions though. Like I'm really happy that people put those out there early so we could discuss them.
Yeah, I like answering questions because I feel like it keeps us sharp, right?
Yeah.
Keeps us on our toes. Plus, I was saying this to somebody earlier, like you don't, there's no point that you get to where you know all and understand all and accomplish all. It's a constant learning process. So, and some of the questions being asked, we might be approaching something that we've never dealt with before, never come across before.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking when I originally mentioned it, I thought, we'll do it for, people in the comments asking us questions. But, like it's late at night. I don't know too many people. There's a couple people watching, but not too many.
One thing I will say though, Chris, and we've talked about this off camera, is there's this weird sort of, I won't say misconception because it's not as though it's been misconstrued in any way, but we're only about 2.5 years into this, where there's other people who've been doing 15, 20 years. Now, some people, not some, I've had one person specifically say to me, like, wow, you guys have kind of, accomplished and been able to do a lot in such a short time. Well, when your average Joe is doing it, during the day or during business hours, if you will, I mean, there's been countless nights where I'm talking 24 hours, like you don't go to bed, you're obsessing, you're researching everything you can, you're going through every book you can, you're buying every resource you can, I mean, how many times have I messaged you at 3 in the morning and you're up looking, I'm looking at this and trying to find this, and like it's in your brain and you don't stop. So some of these projects, some of these models you get into, and it's 24 hours a day, like you don't stop. And it's like, so for people to think that like, oh yeah, it just took a year or two and able to nail down all this stuff. No, some of these things have been like, that's all you do, eat, live, sleep, and breathe it for days on end, weeks on end, sometimes months.
Okay, yeah, so
that's close.
It's not
much closer.
It's not quite. It's not quite as close as I thought it would be.
Yeah, these ones are a little more squared.
Yeah, they're a little more square. This one is a little more rounded, like curved. So I'm not going to commit a crime tonight, I don't think. But yeah, that's what these things are. I took one look at them like, oh yeah, I know exactly what those things are. I got this model off of John, and I still have to finish it. Yeah, I got to put these engines on the back, and I got to put this canopy up across the top, and I got to do this down here. Oh, you're not seeing what I'm pointing to. I got to do these engines on the back. I got to do this canopy up top here across, and then the greeblies in this section, and in here I have to do yet. I'm trying to find these lock nuts that match. I was able to ID these inside the engine ones. I ID those on my own. Pretty soon I'm going to get to paint this. I'm going to paint this soon. As soon as I get these parts, I got to find good ones like that. All right, I'm not going to steal these tonight. Yeah. Okay. All right, brother. Are you what hotel chain? Yeah, it's Fairfield. Fairfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fairfield. Yeah, I'm trying to find, and actually these are medium-sized ones, and I haven't been able to find ones this size because they have to fit specifically around this F1 engine. I've been able to find ones bigger than this and ones that are smaller than the engine here, but I haven't found ones that are like right in the middle that are going to be the right size. I did. I found them on Amazon too, but they're a little big. I might have to alter the ones that I found to make them shrink a little bit. I'd rather find ones that are right, but you never know what light these come from in England, 40 years ago. You know what I mean? 30 years ago. Could be any light.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. All right. Are you going on Shelter in Space tonight?
I think so, yeah. If I can get up, yeah.
All right. So I guess that's good. thank you everybody for joining. It is after midnight, and I do have to get up at 6:30 tomorrow morning. I have to get up at 6 tomorrow morning. So we have Shelter in Space tonight, and we're gonna have a special show Friday. I haven't put the thumbnail up yet. I haven't quite confirmed yet, but I think it's gonna be pretty. I think it's pretty likely it's gonna happen.
Okay.
Guy named Marvin S. Fantastic builder. I very knowledgeable guy. I'm excited to actually get to talk to him. I've talked to him online. I've talked to him through text quite a bit. But to talk to him in person is going to be great. And meet up with him in Celebration as well. Pick his brain and try to, glean some knowledge from somebody who knows a lot more than we do. But that will probably be Friday, 2:00 p.m. our time. He is 6 hours ahead of us. 6 hours. He's in the Netherlands, I think. And the main reason he's coming on is so we can finally figure out how to say his name the correct way. So I'm excited to find out how to say it, so I don't have to be like Marvin's. John says Stifelhagen or something like that, and I don't. We'll see. But he's very knowledgeable and seems like a great guy, and I'm looking forward to that. So if you're around to catch it live, if not, watch it on the YouTube.
Be there or be square, people.
Yes. So, all right. Well, good night, everybody. Thanks, Richard, for commenting a lot. And everybody else who commented tonight. And I hope you enjoyed it. And see you later this week. Ciao.
Ciao.
Outro.